Hello again, garden friends. Today I'm going to show you how I automatically water 15 raised garden beds. I don't know about you, but I have garden chores that I like and garden chores I don't like. And watering the garden is at the top of the list of things I don't like. And when you have a larger garden like I do, hand watering takes forever. Not to mention the fact that I have 3 kids that are in school. I have a job, but we just, busy life in general. And watering in the early morning is best for the garden, but it's the most inconvenient time for me. Pretty much right after we installed this garden, I was looking for ways on how to automatically water. Now, we did have to do a few things to prep my garden to do this. Where my garden is situated in my backyard, it's not near any water spigots. In fact, there's no water spigots on the back of my house at all. They're all on the side. So rather than constantly have to run a really long hose out to the garden, I had some spigots installed in the garden. I have 3. This was a pretty big project, and not everyone needs to do this, just depending on where your garden is. But for me, it made a lot more sense to have a water source right there in the garden. It also helps me a lot with water pressure. The first thing I used for automatic watering was soaker hoses, and I still think that these are a great option, especially if you're looking for something that's easy to install and inexpensive. In fact, I still have soaker hoses on a few of my raised beds. I'll show you why in just a little bit. But there's a few things I didn't like about them. The first was the spread of water on either side of that hose is only a few inches. So even if I ran multiple lines on that bed, I still wouldn't water the entire bed. The other and the biggest reason was they're not all weather. So I had to pull up these hoses at the end of every garden season and store them for the winter. Again, not a huge deal if you only have 1 or 2 raised beds, but when you have 15, I had to label them, store them, pull them back out, and it was just something I didn't want to do. And soaker hoses can split and crack really easily, so I felt like I was having to constantly make repairs. I was able to use water timers, hose splitters, and connections to water my entire raised bed automatically with those soaker hoses. I do have a video about that system. If you're interested in seeing that, I'll link it below. But about 2 years ago, I was introduced to watering grids, and I knew immediately that this was the solution I was looking for my garden. And over the last 2 years, I've slowly been replacing most of my soaker hoses for those watering grids, and my garden has thanked me for it. This is a much better solution in several ways. One is that they're all weather. I can leave them out all year round, 365 days a year. In fact, last winter we had about a week well into the negatives, very hard freezes, a lot of ice, and these grids did just fine. They're similar to emitter hoses where you have holes every so often, so you're getting more of a stream than you are like a drip with soaker hoses. But the difference with these grids is they're watering from 4 sides, so they do a great job at watering over the entire surface area of that bed. Another great thing is that the grids are in 1 by 1 foot squares, so they really help with spacing when you're planting. If you're into square foot gardening, these are perfect. My watering grids are from a company called Garden in Minutes. This is a family-owned company, incredible customer service, and I can honestly say that yes, you will pay more than you would for soaker hoses, but after using these for 9 months out of the year over the last 2.5 years and testing them out in a variety of ways, I can honestly say that these are good products. They are quality products. And if you have a larger garden like I do, you can slowly change out your soaker hoses for these watering grids because this system uses regular hose connections. So it's really great at running a mixed system. Garden in Minutes sells bundles where you can get a metal raised bed with a watering grid, or you can get just the watering grids to go on existing raised beds. I actually have both. I love the metal raised beds. They're also great quality. In fact, the next project will be I'm slowly changing out all of my wood raised beds for metal raised beds, but that's going to be over the next several years. Garden in Minutes also has hose splitters, so you can run multiple hoses off of one spigot. They also have custom length hoses, so you can connect multiple beds. And the way their connection manifolds work on their grids, you can connect multiple grids to one bed for larger beds. And don't worry, I'm going to give you a visual on all this in just a minute. The grids also come in a bunch of different different sizes. So no matter what size your raised bed, you should be able to find one to fit it. Really quickly, before I show you the system, I want to talk water pressure because I know that's a big concern with a lot of gardeners who are using automated systems. Even with those 3 spigots, I cannot run all 15 raised beds at once without losing pressure. So what I do is I have water timers on each of those spigots, so it creates like a zone. These water timers are set to run once every 3 days, and each of those 3 zones alternates day. So zone 1 will run one day, that's 4 or 5 beds, zone 2 the next day, and zone 3 the next day. So only one zone is running per day. But in those zones, I have 4 to 5 raised beds, and some of them are really big. But because these grids are more like emitter tubing than they are soaker hoses, I can turn up the pressure a little higher, which allows me to keep the pressure throughout that zone. If, especially during the middle of the summer, I feel like my beds need to be watered more than every 3 days, then I can do a manual run in the evening or after another zone has finished watering. Okay, now let me show you what this system looks like. I recently harvested garlic out of this bed, so it's empty, but it will make it easier to see. So this is what one of the watering grids look like that I added to an existing raised bed. And this entire bed is 3 by 12, so I have 2 3 by 6 grids on this bed. Like I said, each of these squares are 1 by 1, and you can hopefully see the water coming out of all 4 sides of that grid. Because I have interior posts on my raised beds, you can get the option to have a cornerless watering grid. If you don't have interior posts, then it would just be completely straight across. But you can see even from that corner, the water's coming out here and here, so it will still water in that corner. Another great thing is if you have a raised bed that's not an exact foot measurement, so you have a couple extra inches on the end, you can turn these tubes in different directions. So I can turn this tube outward and it'll water outward towards those last few inches. These are the connection manifolds, and they're great because they give you a lot of options. So right here, I'm connecting 2 3 by 6 foot grids to fill this 12-foot long bed. You're able to turn off water to one or both of the grids if you want to. There's also 2 hose connections, one going in and one going out if I want to connect to another bed. And these connection manifolds come in different heights depending on how tall your raised bed is. This is my largest raised bed. It's 6 feet by 12 feet. And by the way, I don't recommend doing that because it makes it really hard to harvest in the middle. But I have 4 3 by 6 grids on this bed, so I'm still able to water the entire bed. And I have connection manifolds on each side. So one connecting 2 3 by 6 grids here and another connecting 2 3 by 6 grids on the other side. This is what the setup looks like at the spigot. So I have 3 identical setups in my garden. So I have the spigot here. I have a water timer. I got this on Amazon. I'll link that below. I like it because it has the option to run a manual if I want to just water whenever I want to. Then I have this 4-way hose splitter, which right now I have 3 hoses coming off. I have an extra one if I want to run a hose to somewhere else in the garden. And I like these hose splitters because I can adjust the pressure, how much water is coming out to each of these hoses. And I need to do that just depending on how big the grid is, how far the hose is having to go, but also because, again, I have a mixed system. So I have soaker hoses on 2 of my beds and they can't handle high pressure, so I can lower the pressure going to that bed. This is one of the raised beds I have a soaker hose still on. I have 2 triangular shaped beds in my garden. It's just sort of the way my garden layout is. Now, I could actually put like a couple smaller grids on this bed that will fit within that space, and I may do that because I really don't like having to have the pressure difference on these soaker hoses, and again, the spread just isn't that far. So this is what those soaker hoses look like here. So let me show you a few ways that I run beds from this one spigot. So one, I have this short hose. Again, those custom length hoses are so nice, that runs to this bed that has a watering grid with lots of very happy onions. On the outlet from that connection manifold, I'm running to another small bed that has carrots. From another outlet, I'm running to a raised bed here that's currently growing buckwheat, and that bed connects with this large raised bed. And you can't see the connection manifold because it's under this giant nasturtium, but I'm connecting 2 of those 3x6 foot grids. Then I'm also using that splitter and a custom hose to run to this back bed so that I can run my soaker hose. This back bed here is my other triangular shaped bed that I have a soaker hose on, and let me show you why I prefer those watering grids to the soaker hoses. So here is an example of that soaker hose running, and again, you can see it sort of dripping out. The water just kind of diffuses out, and it will only water really a few inches on either side of those hoses, so I have to put them pretty close together to make sure that I'm watering that whole bed. I practice high intensity gardening, which means I'm growing a lot of things in a small amount of space. So I have onions here, I have peppers growing, I have melons planted growing along the base, I have cucumbers growing vertically, I have some dill, I have some potatoes in the back, so everything is really close together. So having these watering grids makes sure that every inch of that bed is getting watered, which you can hardly see it because it's so covered, but again, that's the point. I want to make sure I'm getting even watering to all of these plants. This bed looks a little sparse because I just replanted some flowers in it, but it's going to fill out really pretty in a few weeks. But this is an example of what the metal raised beds look like. They come in lots of different sizes, and you can get them in a bundle with a watering grid and the connection manifold. But these are 15 inches deep. They do have deeper ones. Really, really great construction. I haven't had any issues with rusting or wear on these beds. Beautiful beds. This is my other metal raised bed. It's covered right now because I have bush beans growing that the rabbits absolutely love. But you can see I have a metal raised bed connected to a wooden raised bed with the watering grid. And there are so many different sizes of these watering grids. I have 3x6 grids. I have 4x7 grids on this in-ground bed. I even have a 1x4 grid on this little raised bed. Thanks so much for joining me today as I showed you my new and improved watering system. I hope I answered all of your questions. If not, please let me know in the comments below. I will be more than happy to answer them. I'll link any videos or products mentioned in this video down below. And don't forget to follow me on my other social media channels where I post easy to follow videos aimed at helping beginner gardeners. Until then, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.